So, welcome to the second episode of DNA of AI. Um, Today, we're going to do a deep dive into AI in cancer diagnosis. And before we do that, how are you, Fema, today?
I'm all right. Yeah, I've had a little bit of stress this week, but nothing that a good bit of boxing and physio can't fix, and a good therapy session can't fix. So yeah, how are you, Ian?
Yeah, good. I'm like, let's not talk about me today. Let's talk about you.
Okay, but we'll have to shift the focus to you at some point. But I'm okay to talk about me today. Go on.
Yeah, today's topic is around AI in cancer diagnosis, and this is your area, right?
Mhm.
So I really want to deep dive into how your startup is actually, creating something that's pretty awesome, I want to say, and how you got to that point, right? So I think this is like really like where I'm curious of. Do you remember when you had the idea for this startup?
Yeah, so cancer is something that is quite close to my heart in general. My about 13 years ago, almost 13 years ago now, we lost my aunt to cancer. She died when she was 50, and she's the only paternal aunt I had, and I was quite close to her, and it it was quite sad because I won't go into too many details because of obviously my respect for her and her family, but being a South Asian woman, like a South Asian British woman who grew up in the UK, when there were very few South Asian people, and then having to kind of try and coexist into sort of cultures, with her parents being from Pakistan and being British, and she had quite a challenging life, and she suffered with depression, and then she ended up having cancer, and unfortunately it was stage 4 when they found it, and then she sadly died, and that was really quite like one of like the biggest losses I've ever experienced, and something I think about quite a lot. And we were very close, and I'm still very close to my cousin, her firstborn daughter. So I wanted to do something that would make a difference. Like I mentioned in the last episode, I don't want to use AI to sell people stuff. I want to use AI to improve the world. And when I was on my astrophysics course, I met an oncologist, a consultant oncologist, and he was very interested in the AI work I'd done in the past, especially because we were on an astrophysics course, and I'd worked with my lecturer at university. He used to work at NASA, and we looked at my final year project was based on his research around the Curiosity rover on Mars, and so that really fascinated my kind of friend and classmate at the time. So we went to his hospital one day, and he showed me the workflow of cancer, and we were looking at lung cancer as the proof of concept that we can then extend out. And what we found were that there were 2 key areas in the workflow where there were massive wait times and a huge burden on the oncologist, of which there's a shortage, and that was in the diagnosis part, and then in the treatment, where they have to delineate healthy tissue from cancerous tissue. And so we thought we could use AI to solve this problem as an assistive tool to help with initially lung cancer diagnosis, and further extending it out to other types of cancer. So that's how the idea was born.
Yeah, right. Fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's okay with you, I would like to go back to the point, like where there was the connection made between the loss that you felt and to, do something about it. Do you remember that moment? Like, maybe it's not one moment, maybe it's like several moments where this idea for you, like where you felt like, I want to do something about this.
Yeah, I just felt like I think a part of me felt like could I have done more? Like, we all think this. Could I have done more for my aunt? She had in a South Asian community, it's not it's not nuclear family. Where family is family, and we were like close-knit family, so there were a lot of people around her, and like, could I have done more for her? Could I have convinced her to go to the doctor earlier? And I felt a sense of guilt around that, but also I thought after she sadly died, and I did a Macmillan cancer kind of a race, like a 5K, to raise money for Macmillan cancer, and I felt quite like that was a good way of honoring her as well. It was in her memory, but I felt like, well, why can't I use my skills in technology, especially when things like medical robotics and stuff was coming to the forefront, to do something in this space that, where that takes so many lives, and where there's an actual shortage of oncologists, where there are, where there's kind of a lack of funding in the NHS. Why can't we use something that like I have expertise in, to build something so that people like my aunt can be diagnosed a lot earlier and a lot quicker, so the cancer doesn't metastasize. And then when I met my classmate and my friend, something just clicked. He was interested in AI. I was fascinated by what he did. We were both into like astrophysics and space. So we were like, yeah, let's do this. We can do this. We can make a difference, like a real, genuine difference in people's lives, and the kind of NHS as well.
Yes, right. The reason why I wanted to go back to that point, because sometimes when we go through a difficult experience, like the loss of a loved one, right, it sometimes spurs some energy after, right? Like some I don't know, for want of a better word, like almost like a desire for life.
Yeah.
To make life happen. I don't know if that makes any sense, but yeah, that's why I wanted to really get a bit more of a sense, and thank you for sharing that. So what I'm also hearing, there are different themes. Like another theme is around meeting the right people, right? Where you share, you have overlap of interests, but then also something about a step even further back about culture. Right?
Yeah.
Can you say a little bit more around your experience of culture and how that influenced all of that, if at all?
Yeah, I think so I think my culture has shaped me in ways. Like I never really thought about it much until I was about 11, really, and then I thought about it more and more. And I think what I find sometimes when we look at things from a very Western and capitalist lens, things are very what can I do? What can I do for myself? What can I achieve? How can I make money? What are my needs, which are important things, because if we don't take care of ourselves, we can't take care of others. But in like a South Asian community, it's a we, it's not an I. We're a collective. Like, we look after each other, we take care of each other, we take care of each other's needs. Sometimes there are negative aspects of that, but overall, you know, you're doing things like you're part of this like group, you're part of this family, and your family is not just your parents and your siblings, it's much wider. And I think that is something that really defines me. Like I don't sometimes to my own detriment, I'm not very individualistic. I always want to do things for the greater good, for the community, for, you know, humanity, to help people. And there's also this messaging that comes with, you know, coming from South Asian culture, coming from a Muslim background, about you know, taking care of others, looking after others, showing kindness to others, being there for others. And sometimes, like you know, if you look at some of the, you know, theory, the psychological theory that might give like a perception that there's a rescuer component to all of this, but I think it's also really, really nice. And I think that's really helped shape my startup. And what my startup does is like, yeah, okay, we have to, you know, pitch to investors, we have to try and get grants, we have to try and get funding, we have to try and make it profitable, and we have to try and like you know, sell ourselves and the product to people. But ultimately the goal is like to kind of, you know, help you know, detect cancer early, save lives early, do it for the greater good for people, and to kind of try and help out the NHS, which is massively underfunded. So that kind of messaging from my culture of doing things for the greater good and helping others carries forward into my startup and who I am as the CEO and the values that my startup stands for.
So, right, thank you, because, you know, my family is Muslim too.
Mm.
Right? And I grew up in a Muslim family in a Western society, right? And I think what we often don't get, like where there's almost like there are certain stereotypes that keep being played when you talk about you know, religious culture and upbringing, and you know, the words that you used, how you described that was really nice to hear, you know, like, because there's more to growing up in a Muslim culture than just you know, being like weird, or I don't know, what for want of a better word. Waffle. Anyway, so what I wanted to check is something in particular, right? So last week we talked about race being sometimes, you know, with AI problematic, right? And I was wondering what your view on that is.
It is problematic. It's problematic in many ways. You know, it's problematic from like one of the kind of environments I want to foster in my startup, which I talked about in the last episode, is diversity. Like I try and ensure that my team is made up of diverse people. It's not just a homogenized group. And that means that, you know, we don't want it to just be South Asian. We don't want it to just be white. We want a mixture of voices and a mixture of people building the product. So we are building the product for everyone, because when we don't do that, then we end up with products that only work for certain people. And things like cancer diagnosis, we all know that, and one of the reasons for my aunt sadly passing is also because you know, people who look like us are much more reluctant to seek the help early. We have like generational trauma linked to kind of medicine and doctors and experimentation. That's why you see so many people in that space who are like anti-vax, or who are very negative when it comes to the kind of medical care system, the Western medical care system. And so we want to ensure that we try and, you know, when people see that the product is created by people who look like them, they'd want to be a part of that, because we're going to need data sets, we are going to need volunteers, we are going to have to go through clinical trials. We want them to feel safe, we want them to feel like, you know, they're represented, and we want to make sure we create a product that works for everyone, that catches cancer early on for everyone and not just one particular group of people. So that's one component of how race plays into the actual making of the product. Yeah.
Can I check, how does your ethnicity, race, culture impact on that?
In terms of the product, or in terms of outside of the product? When
Product.
In terms
of both.
Well, in terms of the product, I'm very aware of bias in data. I'm very aware, like an example of this is what I find is when this is your lived experience, you are going to be automatically aware of these things. You're gonna, if you don't know the statistics or the studies, you will seek them out. But when you're not, when you never had to go through any kind of marginalization, you're going to need that pointed out to you. And even then there's going to be a resistance towards that. So I already, like, coming in, I am very aware of, you know, the challenges that AI faces with kind of the data sets that it's trained on. You know, there are multiple examples out there which I've talked about, you know, things like Google not detecting brown hands because it's only been trained on white hands for dispensers, DOJ handing out harsher sentences, etc. So, you know, although at the moment our prototype is being trained on open source data because we're not in the NHS at the moment, you know, there's a high level degree of awareness from the whole team that we need to look at diverse data sets. We're also looking into the regulatory aspect of AI. So currently, at the moment, myself and my advisors and my team, we're looking at what are the regulatory aspects. How do we put diversity into that as well, to ensure that the product is something that's made for everyone. And then when you go through those clinical trial processes, etc., that this is at the forefront. Because this is a big problem and a big challenge in AI itself. And then, go ahead.
So that makes you the person who can hack this, right?
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah. And then you said on the outside of the product itself, on the outside of the product, that there are massive amounts of challenges, because there's a lot of studies out there, and like these, if you just Google it, like for instance, ethnic minority and women when it comes to funding, they'll go back as like July 2023, which is pretty recent, and you hear things like, can you hear some feedback?
No.
Okay. You've got things like female-founded businesses only get 2% of VC funding. VC is venture capitalist. Then there were like organizations like Innovate UK, where they're a government-based organization who give grants to people. And it turns out that, you know, again, research that was led by marginalized people and females wasn't given as much funding. And what I've noticed since that study came out, now on Innovate UK, they have like an EDI questionnaire for every application. So they are trying to do stuff, but those challenges exist. And like even as recently as like when I go and pitch to venture capitalists or angel investors, one example of that is I was trying to explain my idea, and the person I was speaking to was white male, and he's he's got all the cards, he's got the money, he's going to let me tell me if my idea is good or not. He would not let me speak. Every time I tried to speak, he was talking over me. He kept shooting me down. He kept saying that I hadn't thought things through. I hadn't done X, Y, Z. And then when I finally got to speak to him and then explain what we were trying to do, what the problem was we were trying to solve, his interest peaked. And then he's like, oh, okay, but if you still do X, Y, Z, then we can have another conversation. Please keep in touch. So I felt like I just been like hammered hard. And then he's like, please keep in touch and keep me updated. But it's like, why are you going in so hard? Why are you not letting me speak? Would you treat somebody who didn't look like me like this. And then a more recent example is from this week, where I came across a post on LinkedIn for someone who's working in the AI space and mental health, and it really resonated with me. I felt like, oh wow, this person's really brave. They're putting themselves out there. And then it turns out they're also an investor. So I reached out to them. I sent them my pitch deck. So before I tell you what happened, my pitch deck has been revised multiple times because of like all the feedback I get from predominantly white male investors on why my pitch deck isn't good. So I had a 10-page pitch deck, and then I was told, you need to have statistics, you need to have your story, you need to have your USP, you need to have your competitors in there, you need to have all these things. So now my pitch deck, it's a very comprehensive pitch deck, so it's quite lengthy. It's about 40 slides. So that's deviated from their 10-slide pitch deck because I can't get everything they need into 10 slides. But also it means that we've also created a pitch deck that's accessible, so not everything is lumped into one slide. So I sent this pitch deck to this person, again, a white male, and they came back with like they responded within like 10 minutes, and the feedback was, I don't know you, I don't know your story, you've sent me a very lengthy pitch deck, you're giving me all these facts and figures, this isn't for me, I'm not an expert in this area, you haven't told me who you are and why I should invest in you, or what your USPs, although the USPs on the pitch deck on a slide called USP. And USP is unique selling point. I just felt like initially, I just felt like, whoa, like you've just completely, this is just another form of dismissal. And like again, like people like me who look like me, based on like the history of coming from a grandchild of immigrants, like the only way we could show our worth to the society we lived in was through academics, through grades, through metrics, through proving our worth, right? Nobody wants to know the brown girl story. They just want to know, what can you do? And then that's probably one of the reasons why that's at the forefront of the pitch deck. And it's like, he doesn't understand that. And there's also a vulnerability to sharing who you are to someone who's in a position of privilege where they can share who they are, and they're going to be told they're brave. But people who look like me, when we say who we are, that's not what we get hurt, what we're met with.
What is it like for you to tell me here on this podcast publicly who you are and what you're about?
Well, the thing is, Ian, is that I know this is going to be public, but like I always feel safe with you. I've always felt safe with you. So it's easy for me to tell you who I am. We're friends. And when I talk to you, that space of safety is created, but that safety doesn't exist in, with these strangers who are not, I just want to differentiate, they're not the oppressor. These individuals are not the oppressor. They look like the people who oppressed people like me. How can I feel safe enough to share? I know I'm asking for money, but I've put all this effort in, but you're not putting the effort in to understand why it wouldn't feel safe for me. But the first thing for you to see is who I am. With you, it's like I've never felt not safe to share who I am or be who I am. So it feels easier. And, we share like a common background. I mean, that helps and it makes it easier. And I don't believe that somebody has to come from your background, but they have to be willing to create that safe space for you. And I don't feel like in this space of angel investors and venture capitalists who are predominantly white men think about that or do that. And then someone like me has to point that out on this podcast.
So have you come across any investors who aren't white? Or who are female? Or who are just different?
I've come across a few female investors, and I've come across a few who aren't white, and I've come across a few who are female and not white. And it's great to connect with them, but the power does seem to lie predominantly with the white male investors. But it's always nice to see, you know, and I have reached out, but again, they probably get like so many people reaching out to them. Yeah, but those who have engaged with me have predominantly been white male. I'm hoping that maybe.
Yes, go on.
I'm hoping that maybe somebody out there is listening who's not white male necessarily will hear this and maybe will want to reach out and work together. Oh, but I also reached out to, because I love tennis and I love Serena Williams, and she's got a VC company, and I know she's probably gets like thousands of these, but I have reached out to her company as well. Her VC submitted my pitch deck, but you know, I haven't.
Right. And again, I mean, the white people who are genuinely caring, kind, and interested in, you know, investing in projects that will make a difference in people's lives. So, right.
Yeah.
But I wanted to, you know, just go a little bit more deeper. If like, and the other thing I wanted to say is the word that comes to my mind as you're describing female and brown intersectionality, right? Basically having intersecting oppressive systems of oppression at the same time impacting on you, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I do want to give like, I don't want to be disparaging of, you know, of these people. They are like, the people I've engaged with are absolutely lovely people. This person I spoke to this week, I have a lot of admiration and respect for what he's doing, and like I said, I find him to be brave, and I articulated that to him, and I'm sure he gets thousands of you know, people sending pitch decks, you know, asking for money, and what I'm trying to shine a light on is more how difficult it is for someone like me to be as open and vulnerable as he wants me to be, because I don't know him, rather than anything disparaging about him, because in fact I don't feel like he did anything that, you know, I would consider, oh my God, this is like so awful. And in fact, I feel like he made me think about why I don't share my story. So he got me thinking, and I've got like a meeting later on tonight with my graphic designer to maybe like try and tell my story and be a bit more vulnerable. So in that respect, that was very positive. And I also initially, just before we actually did the Brexit, and I think just as the pandemic was hitting, I was speaking to a really lovely investor who was white male. He was a little bit older. He was the most empathetic person. I spoke to him a number of times. He was very close to investing. He was very kind. He was very, very warm. He was very interested when I told him about the diversity issues. It was just unfortunate that Brexit happened, and then he was no longer investing as a result because of the sort of the instability around that. So it's not to be disparaging and to say that, you know, this is all white males. It's more that this is a systemic issue, you know, which, you know, the research shows, that the articles are showing, rather than anything related to one particular individual.
Yes, right. And yeah, thank you for acknowledging that, right? I think sometimes it can be like when you talk about race, it could be like, white people are bad. No.
It's not at all. No. Right. Yeah, no, absolutely not. They are like, you know, individual level, you know, you and I both have very diverse groups of friends, that includes white people, and, you know, they are like kind and caring and compassionate on a human level. We connect, right? We are, as people, we are more alike than we are different. It's just that at this systemic level, sometimes I wish they would think about things just a little bit more, just that like, maybe that, even if it's just 1% more, to like, why has this person sent me like all these facts and figures rather than a story about themselves? Could it be because of who they are and who they, you know, where, you know, where they come from, or where their family of origin comes from, rather than thinking, you know, one of the other questions they asked me was, why have you only raised X amount of money? And it's like, again, that sounds like a question that comes from a place of privilege. I've only raised X amount of money because of the issues I've talked about how, you know, again, 2% of females are given VC funding. Marginalized people and females are not given grants as freely and you know, openly. So I mean, I think he could have thought about that himself a bit harder rather than putting it on me, as in like, what's wrong with you? Why have you only received X amount of money, so raised X amount of money so far?
So, right, today you told your story a little bit.
Yeah, and I've noticed I haven't said much about the startup, but I do want to say a bit about the startup. And like I said, what we are trying to do is improve diagnosis and treatment pathways for cancer patients, so using AI based tools. Like the reason we are doing it is because there's like 47,800 new lung cancer cases a year, and then 35,000 people die from lung cancer each year, and it's 21% of all the total cancer deaths. So it's the most common cause of cancer deaths. So that's one of the reasons why we want to use that as our starting point. If we can try and solve it for this, or alleviate some of this burden, then we can kind of move it out to different types of cancer. And it costs the UK economy 2.4 billion. If we were to tackle this earlier, so the earlier NHS diagnosis of lung cancer, it also means the treatment cost would cost much less. So, for example, a stage 1 early diagnosis is £8,000, and it's kind of more than 3 in 10 survive for more than 5 years, whereas stage 4 is £13,100 cost to the NHS, and then less than 1 in 10 survive more than 5 years. And then just like things like one of the reasons why we're tackling the workflow is because the average waiting time from the symptoms visit to the CT report is 10 days. And then, you know, there's a shortage of oncologists. I think at the moment it's at 24%, and in the next few years it'll be like 28%. So, you know, these tired oncologists, there's a potential for errors, and it takes a massive emotional toll on patients and their families as well. So sorry, 29% national shortage of clinical oncologists. And then like COVID has increased the backlog of waiting time as well. And then these oncologists, when they're doing the waiting for like 10 days for the CT scan, and they have to assess whether it's cancer or not. If it's cancerous, they then have to sit there and manually contour to 1 millimeter the cancerous tissue from the healthy tissue, which takes like 2 hours per CT scan. If there's multiple CT scans, it could take longer. So that in itself is problematic as well, something we could use AI and technology to assist with. Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why we're doing it. And then we, like I said, we worked through the workflow. Like we've got all these like diagrams and stuff in our pitch deck, you know, where the patient comes in and where we would replace it with AI, and what would happen. So yeah, and in terms of my team, I just want to give a shout out to my team, because, you know, we've done so much work. We've gone through the competitive landscape. We've you know, looked at things like from every angle. We've looked at the NHS. We've come up with our USP, which is, you know, we're offering a holistic and comprehensive solution that's just beyond focusing on the diagnosis. And we want to use the AI technology to optimize the entire workflow for lung cancer diagnosis and treatment. So we're not just looking at it as like a replacement tool, but more of an assistive tool. And like my team is made up of like experts. Like, you know, we've got Adam, who's got a background in pharmacy, and he's like got that medical background. Our advisor works in pharmaceuticals. She's got a lot of regulatory background. And then we've got a relationship with the University of Birmingham, so we've got advisors who are like NHS cancer surgeons and work in the engineering department, work in medical space. And then we've got like 2 developers, very good AI machine learning backgrounds, engineering backgrounds. And then obviously we've got like graphic designer, and then there's me. So, you know, my team deserve a lot of kudos too, because they put so much work into this to try and make this happen.
Yeah, thank you. So we're at time for today, and just before we wrap up,
Well, before we wrap up, I wanted to share something, just so that it gets people thinking. And this is from a book by Jaspreet Kaur called Brown Girl Like Me. I just want to share this little excerpt from it because I think it will really really hone in the message of why, especially South Asian girls, have such a hard time selling themselves. So is it okay if I just read this bit?
of course.
So it goes, South Asian girls are actually some of the smartest students in the country. Fact, at every academic level, they follow closely behind Chinese boys and girls in terms of academic achievement. Yet, despite this, during my years as a teacher, I have found that Asian girls are the least likely to put their hand up in class. They're the least likely to get involved in class debates or put themselves forward for prestigious roles. This despite the fact that 53% of Asian girls achieved an average attainment 8, which is an equivalent to an A star across their GCSEs, which is way above the national average. Beyond the classroom, later in life, even though an increasing number of brown women have college or university level qualifications, South Asian women, especially Bangladeshi and Pakistani Muslim women, remain among the most excluded and lowest paid sections of the labour force. I'm sure many of you have already heard the oft quoted statistic that there are more FTSE 100 CEOs named Steve and David than there are women and ethnic minority leaders combined. And more widely, data from the Office for National Statistics Labour Force Survey suggests that Muslim women are up to 65% less likely to be employed than white Christian women of the same age and qualifications. How can this make sense? It's clearly not because brown women are not hardworking. Our accolades prove that. So why is that not translating into opportunities later on in life? Is it, of course, because of the wider oppressive structures at play, structures to do with our gender, ethnicity, and perhaps even our class? Unfortunately, structural racism and sexism are its very, very clearest. So where does this all start? And more importantly, what do we do about it? How can we take some of this power back and empower ourselves? And I find that really moving. So if anyone wants to read this, it's a book called Brown Girl Like Me by Jaspreet Kaur. And more recently, I was on a diversity call with like-minded people for this diversity group, and someone said, and they said I was going to attribute the quote to them, but they said it's not their quote. But they said, if you don't let me at your table, I will make my own table. So that's really stuck with me this week as well. So I just wanted to finish on that.
Thank you. That's a nice point to end for us.